Welcome to the 21 Convention, Tampa, Florida. This speech is something that we are all about here. Health, having the best physical expression of yourself, learning your body, your diet. And this is actually an interesting story that comes, on so many different levels. Years ago, our next speaker was not that healthy. He and his wife, both scientists, his wife showed Ching and him, decided to learn to get healthy in an absolute design, an absolute map, and this produced the perfect health diet. Let's welcome on stage Paul Jaminet.
Great, man.
Thank you, Steve. Well, it's great to be here, and as Steve said, I'm going to be speaking about how to be healthy. This is really a joint project of my wife and I. We both had long-standing health problems. We'd go to the doctors every year, and every year they couldn't help us. And every year we got worse. Finally, things started to change in 2005 when I discovered the paleo diet. And that was the first thing we tried that made a difference. It had good effects and bad effects. And so we figured out, oh, we need to fix it. But it was a really crucial clue because it taught us that diet was important. And when we started to think about what had gone wrong on the paleo diet, we realized that we had some nutritional deficiencies, so we learned nutrition is important. And later on, we started learning more and more things. So after 9 years of research, after about 7, we published a book, Perfect Health Diet, through Scribner. And we've also recently started a health retreat on the beach in North Carolina. And so what you're getting in the next hour is a really rapid run-through of 9 years of research and a lot of experience. All right, so what I want to summarize in the talk are the 3 most important factors in health. All right, these are the 3 things that will be constantly affecting your health. And the most important thing to take away from this slide is you have a great deal of control over your health. So diet and nutrition, you're in total control of those. Lifestyle, you have a tremendous amount of control over that. Microbes, you don't have a huge amount of control, but you have more control than anyone else does. All right? And your doctor has relatively little control over these. You know, until doctors start chaining you into their offices and feeding you, your doctor can only do so much to influence the major factors on your health. So the remedies that doctors have are only playing around at the edges of your health. So doctors are tremendous resources for diagnosis, for testing, for advice. But if you really want to be healthy, you need to take charge, and you need to manage these aspects of your life. All right, so let's first talk about diet and nutrition. Now they always teach speakers, you should give people an idea where you're heading. So let me just give you the conclusion. How should you eat? Here's a somewhat abstract summary of our diet, but we chose an apple because it symbolizes health, and we chose the yin-yang symbol because my wife is Chinese. We wanted to represent the concept of balance. So on the left are plant foods, on the right animal foods. And basically the way you want to construct your plate, construct your diet, is with roughly equal parts of meat, fish, or eggs, some starch. Typically for us it would be white rice or white potatoes, some kind of sweet plant like a fruit, berry, carrots, beets, and some kind of vegetable. And then add flavorings, and typically those would include some kind of flavoring fat, like butter, sour cream, coconut milk, maybe nut butters, some kind of acid, like vinegar or lemon juice, and some kind of umami flavor. Umami comes from fermented foods, and that would include things like fish sauce, tamari sauce, Worcestershire sauce, grated cheese, things like that. So the food will end up being about 3/4 plant food by weight, about 1/4 animal foods. It's a natural whole foods diet, and we exclude a lot of things. The single most important thing to exclude are vegetable seed oils. So any oils high in omega-6 fats. So don't eat anything that has soybean oil in it, corn oil, anything like that. And how does it look on a plate? Bibimbap is the Korean word for leftovers, basically. And so this is a very typical way you might rapidly make a lunch out of leftovers. It's hard to see, but there's rice in the bottom of that bowl. You just throw in some leftover meat, throw in some leftover vegetables. You can have a piece of fruit on the side. You put in the flavorings. That's a fermented bean sauce for an umami flavor. You throw in some vinegar and a little oil and put it in the microwave. You've got a great, balanced, nourishing lunch. All right? Now, what are some of the keys? So I want to boil diet down, give you some of the science and help motivate and tell you what are the crucial pieces of a healthy diet. And the first most crucial piece is you have to eat natural whole foods. That means things that were recently living plants and animals. All right? And now, there have been lots of technical advances in industrial food production, and they figured out a lot of things, but they haven't yet figured out how to make healthy food. All right? And we know this is true even if you look in babies, all right, and baby formula and compare it to breastfeeding, breast milk. Breastfed babies are healthier than formula-fed babies. And that's true even though the formula makers, they're trying to match the milk as best they can. All right? So even when we're using all of our resources of technology to try to match the natural food, we still can't make it as healthy. And if you look at the other foods like cakes, cookies, donuts, they're not trying to make it as healthy as regular food. So you can imagine if they're still falling short with formula, they're going to be falling short with everything else. And people have done lots of experiments comparing industrial foods to natural whole foods. What happens, here's an experiment from the 1970s, where they had two groups of rats. One fed a diet of eggs only, chicken eggs, and the other fed a diet of egg beaters, all right, on artificial made-up food. And the rats that were fed the natural eggs, the mothers had healthy pups, and the pups grew up just fine. But the mothers fed egg beaters had these little scrawny pups, and they died a few weeks after weaning, all right? So these artificial foods are not healthy replacements for natural whole foods, and they probably will never be. Okay? So you want to eat natural whole foods. Now, how did we go about designing our diet? We called it the perfect health diet. Why? Because that's our goal. They say your reach should exceed your grasp. It will inevitably, so you should reach as high as you can. You should reach for perfection, and that's what we were aiming for. We had no idea what were the crucial elements of diet and nutrition, so we just decided we wouldn't try to figure out what was important, we just try to make everything perfect. And that was why it took us 7 years to write our diet book, but it also came up with a really good diet. And our general strategy was to look at every known nutrient that the human body needs and figure out how to optimize its amount. All right? Now, every nutrient, if you keep the context of the rest of the diet fixed, the amount of the nutrient that you get is going to affect your health according to this pattern. So if you're deficient, you're going to have terrible health. As you add more, your health will get better and better. And then you'll get enough so that your body has as much as it needs, and your health will plateau, and then eventually you'll be taking too much and it will become toxic. And I'll just give you a few quick examples. Here's optimal sodium. All right. What's your chances of dying based on different sodium intakes? And you see here it's basically the same U-curve, but flipped upside down because it's easier to measure deaths than health. And so what we see is there's an optimal amount. There's a U-shaped curve, and it turns out that's about the amount of sodium in 2 teaspoons of salt per day. But all living things have sodium in them, and so you get some sodium through food, so you should actually be eating maybe half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt per day. Here's another one, calcium. And here plotted vertically is the likelihood of fracturing your hip, all right? And you can see there's an optimum, all right? So we went through all the known nutrients, tried to find the optimum amount, and then worked backwards to food and says, all right, we're going to eat a natural whole foods diet. What combinations of foods do we need in order to achieve that? All right, and we got that food plate. All right, so what you want, a mix of starch, a mix of sweet plants, vegetables, meat, fish, eggs, and then the various flavorings. All right, now there's a lot of evidence that people are malnourished, and there's good reasons to think that they should be malnourished the way they're eating. All right, but here's just one example from the Iowa Women's Health Study. They looked at elderly women and see what was the effect of taking supplements. And basically, for nearly all nutrients, the women who took the supplements had like a 20% lower chance of dying. All right, and the exceptions there, the ones that increased the risk of dying, were iron. So basically, if you're not menstruating or pregnant, it's very difficult to become iron deficient, very easy to get too much. You should pretty much never supplement iron if you're a man or a postmenopausal woman. And in fact, you should consider donating blood regularly to get rid of it. Folic acid is another one. It's easy to get an excess of folic acid, especially since they fortify all kinds of foods with folic acid nowadays. And vitamin A, that's really linked to vitamin D deficiency. So vitamin A is fine if your vitamin D is normal, but most people are vitamin D deficient. But most foods, most supplements show up as highly beneficial. And why? Because people are very malnourished. So let's look at, on the right is a natural whole foods diet. All of these fruits, vegetables, plants, seafood, meat, fish, eggs. All of those things are very high in micronutrients. They have a lot of micronutrients per calorie. But what are people eating a lot of? It's like things on the left. And people try to make them healthier by buying, back to nature, 100% natural triple ginger cookies. But if you look at the ingredient list, what are they eating? They're eating flour or starch, sugar, oil are the top 3 ingredients, and then a bunch of flavorings. And basically what's happened, the food manufacturers have extracted ingredients from plants, like starch, like oil, like sugar, all right? But they've thrown away all of the micronutrients that were in the plants and all of the other nutrients, and they've just put in flavorings. And so you're getting essentially no micronutrition and lots of macronutrients, all right? And that is something that just started happening a little over a century ago, all right? It's really a recent development in human evolutionary history. All right, now it turns out when you look at diet, there are certain nutrients that are really crucial and that you can easily miss in a natural whole foods diet. All right, so if you just take your starch, your sweet, your vegetable, your meat, and flavor it, then you might easily be missing some key nutrition. And therefore, we recommend that people eat what we call supplemental foods. We call it that because we want you to think, I need to take these routinely, just like I would a supplement. So eat these foods either daily or weekly on a regular schedule. And key foods, eggs. All right, so if you think, what's in an egg yolk? It's all the nutrition a chicken embryo needs to develop. And if in pregnancy, that's when we have our highest nutritional needs. You're building a whole creature. All right, so egg yolks have to have the nutrition to build a whole creature. And similarly, fish eggs, extremely nutritious. So if you wanted, you could substitute caviar for your eggs. But it's really important to get some kind of egg every day.